Ivy Lancaster stood backstage in the ornate hallway of the old estate, her heart beating unevenly as the bustle of the wedding around her swirled like a distant storm. The scent of fresh roses mingled with the faint aroma of polished wood, and the soft murmur of guests filtered through the grand double doors just beyond her reach. She was dressed in a flowing ivory gown that swayed lightly with every breath she took, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she clutched the delicate lace of her veil. Today was meant to be the day she stepped into a new chapter, one filled with promise and love alongside Liam, the man she believed was her soulmate. A flicker of nervous excitement passed through her as she rehearsed her vows under her breath, each word carefully chosen to convey the depths of her feelings. She had fought hard to rebuild her life after years of feeling like an outsider in her own family. Liam's steady support had been her anchor, and the thought of joining their lives filled her with hope. But from across the room, a pair of cold eyes observed her with unfaltering suspicion. Vivian, a distant relative known for her sharp tongue and icy demeanor, leaned in close to whisper to a guest nearby. Ivy's ears caught just enough to freeze her blood. "She's marrying her half-brother." The words jolted Ivy, casting an immediate shadow over the bright room. How could such a whisper exist on this day? Doubt and panic surged through her veins as she turned, searching for the source of that cruel insinuation. The moment she had waited for was slipping away, replaced by a rush of confusion and fear. In that instant, Ivy realized that her wedding was no longer simply a celebration of love. It had become a desperate race to uncover the truth before she said the words that might change everything. The whisper echoed in Ivy's mind as she moved through the lively crowd, the joyful atmosphere feeling suddenly alien and threatening. Every congratulatory smile she received seemed tinged with something else: curiosity, judgment, maybe even suspicion. She could barely speak without her voice trembling, her heart pounding against her ribcage like a frantic drumbeat. She found herself near a small group gathered by the grand staircase, and there was Vivian, her gaze cold and unreadable, inching toward Ivy with that same quiet confidence she always wore like armor. Ivy's breath hitched, but she squared her shoulders and met Vivian's eyes with a calm she didn't yet feel. "Vivian," Ivy said, voice barely a whisper, "what did you just say?" Vivian's lips curled into a faint, disdainful smirk. "Just what you heard, Ivy. People have a right to know the truth before making vows that could lead to ruin." "I don't understand," Ivy replied, a pit opening in her stomach. "What truth?" "Liam and I." "You're marrying your half-brother," Vivian said bluntly, her tone void of sympathy. "You've been lied to, Ivy. It's been kept hidden because no one wanted the scandal. But it's true. Liam Lancaster shares the same father as you." The words crashed over Ivy like icy waves. She blinked, struggling to deny the accusation, but her voice caught in her throat. "That can't be. Liam is nothing like that. We've shared everything. If that were true, someone would have told me." "Or maybe you didn't want to hear," Vivian interrupted sharply. "I've seen the family records tucked away. I know the story. Your father had another family before you. Liam is a product of that." Ivy's mind reeled, trying to grasp the possibility. The image of Liam, the warmth in his eyes, his laughter, how could it be so fundamentally wrong? She swallowed hard, feeling the first prickling of tears. "Why are you telling me this now?" Ivy demanded, anger beginning to flicker beneath her fear. "Is this some spiteful game?" "It's not a game," Vivian said flatly. "I'm giving you a chance to step back before it's too late." Ivy shook her head, stepping back as if distancing herself from the words could make them less true. She felt the sudden weight of isolation pressing down on her. Guests nearby had grown quiet, casting hurried glances her way, sensing the tension but unsure of the cause. Her closest friends, Emily and Grace, noticed the shift. Emily reached out, taking Ivy's hand gently. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." Ivy forced a shaky smile. "It's complicated. Just some rumors I overheard. I need to talk to someone." Her gaze found Liam across the room. He was oblivious, laughing with an uncle, utterly unaware of the damage swirling around him. Determined, Ivy weaved through clusters of guests, approaching a few elderly family members and cousins she hoped could offer clarity. But each inquiry was met with nervous glances, vague denials, or averted eyes. Some whispered assurances that it was just gossip, while others avoided her altogether. Her questions felt like knives, slicing through the delicate afterglow of the day. Ivy's heart ached with every silent response, her mind spinning with doubt and confusion. By now, the ceremony was only minutes away, and the sounds of the organ warming up drifted to her ears. She felt torn. How could she walk down the aisle and speak sacred vows when the foundation of her future felt shaken? Grace squeezed her arm in encouragement. "Whatever this is, we're here for you." Tears pricked Ivy's eyes, and she nodded gratefully. But she couldn't let this ruin her, not without fighting. "I need the truth," she whispered. "Before I say, I do." Vivian watched from a distance, her expression unreadable but her eyes gleaming with a strange satisfaction. As guests whispered to each other, the seed of doubt she planted had clearly taken root. Ivy's chest tightened as she glanced again toward Liam, who was now approaching the entrance to the ceremony hall. The moment to make a decision slammed into her like a tidal wave. Should she reveal what she had heard or remain silent? Could she trust the man she loved, or was she walking into a betrayal too deep to bear? A hush settled over the venue as the first notes began to play. Ivy's resolve solidified. She owed herself honesty. She owed Liam that much. Her fingers curled into fists at her sides, the cool fabric of her dress grounding her as she prepared to confront the impossible. The whispered accusation no longer threatened to paralyze her. It ignited a fire to uncover the truth before the vows that would bind her forever. The wedding, the celebration, would have to wait a little longer. Today, Ivy Lancaster's fight was not just for love, but for the truth that might save or shatter her future. Have you ever encountered a moment when everything you believed was suddenly questioned? Stay with Ivy as she races against time to uncover what lies beneath the surface of truth and trust. The muted clatter of the organ's soft chords washed over Ivy as she retreated to a quiet corner of the estate's vast library, the antique shelves lined with worn leather-bound volumes offering a strange solace from the storm raging in her mind. She sank into a velvet armchair, pressing her palms to her tears as the weight of Vivian's accusation settled like a relentless fog. It was as if every hopeful thread she had woven around Liam had suddenly begun to unravel. Self-doubt wriggled its tendrils into her thoughts. Had she been blind to signs? How could her own family harbor such a secret? Ivy's throat tightened. She swallowed hard, trying to quell the bitterness rising within her. Yet beneath that doubt, a flicker of stubborn resolve remained. She would not be the woman crushed by rumor and suspicion. Not when everything she had dreamed of was on the cusp of reality. Determined, Ivy rose from the armchair and made her way toward the small alcove where an old oak table sat beneath a stained glass window. There, she quietly rummaged through family albums and faded photographs that had been gathered for the reception, and her pulse quickened when she found a dusty, forgotten album labeled Lancaster Family Legacies. Flipping through the pages, she saw portraits of Liam as a boy, alongside her own childhood pictures. Some images showed the two children together at events, laughing, growing up side by side, yet in one, a subtle detail caught her eye, a photograph of a younger man, stern and reserved, who appeared to be in both their lives, but with no clear explanation of their connection. The family resemblance was there, yes, but distant, ambiguous. Her fingers trembled as she traced the faces. It didn't confirm or deny Vivian's claim, it complicated it, suggesting a nuance she hadn't considered. Liam might share a relative, but perhaps not as Vivian had implied. As Ivy absorbed this, a hush settled over the room. She felt eyes on her and looked up to see Emily peering through the doorway, concern etched in her expression. "You okay?" Emily asked quietly. Ivy forced a weary smile. "I think so." It's just a lot to process. Emily stepped inside, taking a photograph Ivy offered. She studied it briefly. You're trying to find clarity in the past, but it's messy. Families always are. The two women sat together, Ivy's heart aching but buoyed by friendship. Still, the tension didn't ease. Ivy could feel the invisible gaze of the other guests, their whispered judgments deepening. Vivian's machinations seemed to have poisoned the air itself. To make matters worse, rumors began to spread like wildfire amid the guests. Ivy overheard snippets as she moved through the rooms. How could they not know? What if it's true? The stares were cold, sharp, as if she was guilty by association. As the ceremony time neared, Ivy felt more and more like the room was shrinking around her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Her closest allies and even Liam sensed her distress, but no one had the answers. Vivian, lurking in shadows, seemed pleased, or at least undisturbed by the chaos she'd unleashed. She whispered to a small cluster, her voice carrying just enough to sting Ivy's ears when she passed. Truth always finds a way, even if messy. Ivy swallowed the lump rising in her throat and focused on the photographs, searching for something more definitive, something to hold on to. She realized she needed more information, someone with knowledge who wasn't clouded by gossip or harsh judgment. Emily, Ivy said quietly, there's one person I need to see, the family elder, Mr. Caldwell. He knows the history better than anyone. Emily nodded, a shadow crossing her face. It's worth a try. Just promise me you won't carry it all alone. A few tense moments later, they found Mr. Caldwell seated in a sunlit parlor, his once bright eyes dimmed but sharp beneath silver eyebrows. His hands gripped a cane, but his demeanor held quiet strength. Ivy, he greeted, recognizing her with a mixture of warmth and concern. What troubles you on such a joyful day? Ivy exhaled, gathering courage. There's a rumor. Vivian said Liam is my half-brother, that we share a father. Is any of that true? Mr. Caldwell studied her carefully, then sighed. Families, Ivy, are rarely simple. There are many chapters, some more complicated than others. He motioned for Ivy to sit, and with deliberate patience, he began to unravel the threads of her family's past. Liam's father is indeed connected to yours, but not by blood. Your father remarried, and Liam is from his second marriage. You are step-siblings, sharing a household but not DNA. Ivy blinked, her heart pounding. So, we're not biologically related? Vivian lied? It seems Vivian twisted truth into poison. Yes, Mr. Caldwell said gently. You and Liam are not half-siblings. Your love is not a betrayal but a bond. Relief surged through Ivy, mingled with frustration and sorrow for the damage done by doubt and gossip. I won't lie, Mr. Caldwell added, the web of relationships in families can cause confusion. But truth deserves to be spoken, especially today. Ivy absorbed his words, feeling renewed strength bloom inside her. Yet she knew the battle was far from over. The whispers hadn't stopped. Vivian's spite had opened old wounds and raised new fears among their guests. She looked out the window at the softly falling light, realizing there was a choice ahead, to flee from the scrutiny or face it head-on. Emily's voice was quiet but firm. No matter what, you're not alone in this. Ivy rose, tightening her jaw. I'm going to face everyone. I owe Liam, and myself, the truth. As they returned to the crowded rooms, Ivy noticed the shifting expressions of those who had looked at her with suspicion. Some avoided her eyes, others whispered still, not ready to believe that the scandal was false. Vivian, seated with a group of guests near the terrace, cast a sharp look toward Ivy, a mixture of disbelief and bitterness clouding her features. Ivy met those eyes steadily, unwilling to show fear. The ceremony preparations were underway, but time felt suspended, heavy with unspoken tension. She realized the journey was now as much about reclaiming her dignity as it was about making peace with the past. Given what Ivy had endured, what would you do if you faced a pivotal moment clouded by doubt and shadowed by secrets? Watch closely as she takes command of her story, bravely confronting the unsettling truths that could either break or bind her heart. The wedding's first notes began anew, the murmur of the crowd swelling, and Ivy Lancaster stepped toward the place where love and truth would collide in the hours that followed. Ivy's fingers trembled as she approached the sunlit veranda where Mr. Caldwell had agreed to meet once more, away from the curious ears that hungered for scandal. The late afternoon cast a golden hue over the sprawling estate, the warmth a stark contrast to the chill that had settled in Ivy's chest since Vivian's whispered accusation had exploded across the day's celebrations. She held tightly to the flicker of hope that the family elder's words had sparked, that Liam was not her half-brother, but rather a stepbrother by the bond of marriage, a distinction that changed everything. Mr. Caldwell greeted her with a kind but serious expression, the weight of the moment not lost on either of them. "Ivy," he said, voice low to avoid prying ears, "I understand you need certainty before stepping forward." She nodded, swallowing a knot of emotion. "I do. This wedding, our future, everything depends on clarity." He led her back inside to a quiet corner, retrieving a carefully folded document from his leather satchel. "I've brought the family records. Not the gossip you hear, but facts. Established through years of record keeping." Ivy's eyes scanned the pages as he explained the lineage. Her father, Charles Lancaster, had married twice. His first marriage ended years before Ivy was born. Liam was the son of Charles's second wife, Amelia, her stepmother, not a blood relative of Ivy's. The family tree, with names, dates, and legal documents confirmed what Mr. Caldwell spoke. Ivy's heart clenched tightly as relief and anger mingled, relief for the truth, anger for the deceit. Suddenly, a noise interrupted the solemn quiet, a soft but unmistakable gasp from the hallway. Vivian stood just beyond the doorway, eyes widened in disbelief as she glimpsed the documents laid bare. "You," Vivian whispered, her voice trembling with a mix of shock and defeat. "This changes nothing. The scandal is still real in people's minds." Ivy turned fully to face her, steady despite the tempest within. "Truth matters more than whispers, Vivian. What you tried to twist into poison was a distorted story. Liam and I are not half-siblings." The room thickened with tension. Vivian's glare was cold, but the shadow of her certainty had faltered. Nearby guests, who had followed silently, began to murmur among themselves, the tide of gossip slowing as the facts came to light. One elderly aunt stepped forward, her voice filled with gentle apology. "Ivy, we should have told you. The confusion came from the closeness of your upbringing, but the bloodlines are clear." The crowd's energy shifted, the palpable weight of judgment lifting as whispers turned to conciliatory words and quiet acknowledgments of misunderstanding. Yet, Ivy's emotions were complex. She felt vindicated, yes, but also exhausted from the gauntlet of mistrust and the scrutiny that had marred what was meant to be a day of joy. "Thank you," she said softly, glancing at Liam, who had joined them quietly, his face a mixture of concern and gratitude. "This means everything." Liam squeezed her hand, eyes shining with renewed faith. "I never doubted us." The moment held fragile and precious as Ivy collected herself. Now, with the truth in her hands and the support of those she loved, she faced the choice to reclaim her day. "Let's not let lies dictate our future," Ivy said, voice resolute. "Today, we choose truth and love." Near the crowd, murmurs turned to applause, tentative but growing. Vivian folded her arms, defeated for now but far from silent. As Ivy prepared to walk back to the ceremony, she glanced out toward the slowly darkening horizon, the sky painted with streaks of orange and purple. The path ahead felt less uncertain now, illuminated by honesty and courage. Truth can be hidden in layers, but when revealed, it has the power to mend and strengthen. Don't miss how Ivy faces this final decision. Soon, she would return to the guests, ready to confront whatever came next, emboldened by the knowledge that clarity was within her reach and that love, unclouded by doubt, could finally bloom. Ivy took a deep breath and stepped forward into the grand hall where the guests had gathered for the wedding ceremony. The golden light from the high chandeliers cast a warm glow on the attendees' faces, some still marked by whispers and sideways glances, others showing tentative smiles. Ivy's heart pounded, not from fear, but from the steady strength growing inside her. Today, she was choosing to reclaim not just her wedding, but her dignity. She met Liam's eyes across the room, the steadfast calm in his gaze steadying her resolve. He smiled gently, mouthing, "I'm with you." That small gesture carried a world of comfort. The murmurs quieted as Ivy made her way to the aisle, every step a bold statement. She was no longer the woman shaken by rumors but one shaped by truth and courage. The crew of familiar faces stirred with surprise and, in some cases, admiration. Some who had been quick to judge looked away, while others whispered apologies behind their hands. Choosing courage, Ivy raised her voice so all could hear, the confidence in her tone unshaken. "Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge the whispers that have clouded today. Rumors of a secret between Liam and me, to some, unsettling. But I stand here to declare, Liam and I are not half-siblings. We are connected by love, not blood. I refuse to let baseless gossip define our bond." A ripple of unease washed over the room, a few gasps following her words, but then a firm clapping began, soft and hesitant at first, swelling into genuine applause. Liam took her hand, their fingers intertwining, a symbol of unity and trust. Vivian sat silently at the side, the harsh lines of her expression softened with embarrassment, though her eyes still held a flicker of resentment. The damage she tried to inflict had unraveled, revealing only her bitterness. Ivy's voice softened as she continued, "Love deserves honor and respect, especially when tested. Today is not just about vows but about truth overcoming fear." The officiant stepped forward, nodding with solemn approval, and the ceremony continued with a newfound lightness. As Ivy and Liam exchanged their vows, every word felt charged with meaning, forged not merely from romance but from resilience and trust born through hardship. Outside, the sun set over the estate in hues of pink and purple, the perfect backdrop to a beginning renewed and unshackled. The guests gradually shifted from suspicion to celebration, laughter and music filling the spaces once occupied by doubt. Apologies were quietly offered to Ivy and Liam by those who had questioned them too hastily, and the warmth of community slowly knitted back together. Vivian's isolation was unmistakable. Though she remained part of the assembly, her voice was lost in the harmony of authentic connections, her attempts to sow discord rendered powerless by Ivy's bravery. Later, as guests mingled beneath twinkling lights and the soft hum of a string quartet, Ivy found herself surrounded by friends and family who uplifted her with heartfelt embraces and kind words. Emily leaned close, her eyes shining. "You handled everything with such grace. The truth always finds its way." Ivy smiled, the exhaustion giving way to quiet joy. "I learned that courage isn't about knowing you'll win but deciding you won't let fear make your choices." Liam squeezed her hand gently. "You are stronger than any whisper, Ivy. I'm proud to be your partner." The night deepened, casting a peaceful shadow over the day's trials. Ivy felt the weight of what she had overcome and the promise of what lay ahead. If you found Ivy's story inspiring, don't forget to subscribe and share. See you in our next story.